When I first initially sat down to make this video, I was going to make essentially my whole artistic life story. But I found, while editing, some crazy things that I did not remember at all, specifically during my time on DeviantArt. So I've decided I'm just gonna re-record this intro and talk about exactly what we're gonna see here, because what has come to light is really shocking comparative to my memory of DeviantArt at the time. So this time frame that I'm going to be talking about in this video specifically is from the years of 2010 to 2017-ish, give or take. But mostly all of this is happening between the years of 2011 to 2014 in terms of like the crazy stuff. I will say there's a content warning here, which is grooming. So if anybody watching this was ever on DeviantArt or really any social media as a kid, you might have a feeling about how these sorts of things go. But basically what I'm going to be talking about here is how I got into making art on DeviantArt, which is a little bit of a long story, and then what kind of art I was making and what kind of communities, and then some of the like toxic stuff that, like I said, as a kid I had no clue the full extent of what was happening and what I was participating in this culture. But it's a little crazy. I'm gonna be exposing some people like full on, because I really have no sympathy for adults who want to like prey on kids online. I'm gonna have to like crop and censor some stuff because, you know, as an adult now, I'm able to access a lot of the stuff that I was looking at as a kid, not even knowing what it was, and it's like crazy, and I'm sure I can't even show half of the images on YouTube. But generally, this is going to be about my artistic growth on DeviantArt and what DeviantArt culture was like during that specific era of the internet. So consider this part reverent historical look back, part, you know, horrible expose. I would like to call this the good, the bad, and the ugly of DeviantArt, but it's mostly just really good and truly horrible. So here we go. One piece of media that totally changed my entire life in terms of art making is there was a show airing on TV when I was a kid on Nicktoons. I don't know if any of you remember. It was called Dragon Ball Z Kai.
Don't stop, we're in luck now. Don't stop, there's so much.
On Nickelodeon's Nicktoons. And I cannot emphasize this enough. This show airing during the exact same point in my life that I became like sentient like as a person, enough to begin forming my own like opinions and preferences, totally altered the course of my lifetime. If you know nothing about Dragon Ball as a franchise, which is the preferred way to live, Dragon Ball Z Kai was a remastering of Dragon Ball Z and like a re-release for a new generation of kids. Back in like the 90s, 80s, 90s, Dragon Ball Z, and then Dragon Ball GT. I could make a whole timeline of this, but basically Dragon Ball Z was the big one in the middle there, right? What they did was they cut out all the filler and crap that they had to use for production purposes back then, and then they kind of traced over all the bad, low quality drawings, and then they redubbed that to make it more aligned with what it should have been, and then they released it as its own series with a new intro and outro and stuff like that. So like the kids of those people who grew up watching it in Dragon Ball Z's release in the 90s were now able to watch Dragon Ball Z Kai as it was known in the West, like America, anyway. I didn't know any of that. I just knew about Dragon Ball Z Kai. That's all I knew. And when it would come on the TV, I liked it, right? Maybe even loved it in terms of a TV show, but I didn't really know anything else about it other than what was airing on TV. But one day, I went with my dad to Best Buy or whatever, back when people would like buy DVDs. I saw that they had these beautiful box sets of something that said Dragon Ball Z right? And I was like, what? I only knew Z Kai. I was like, what's the difference here? Obviously, I knew about the plot. Also, here's something else to note about Z Kai. This is so extended, and I'm sorry, but it is relevant to my personal artistic story. Dragon Ball Z Kai, at the time, had only run up to the first 6 seasons of Dragon Ball Z, the original run. And due to the major earthquake in Japan, the production would actually be halted of the final 3 seasons of the original Dragon Ball Z into Z Kai for several years. So my entire knowledge of the Dragon Ball Z universe was based on Dragon Ball Z Kai retelling up to the Cell Saga at the end of the original season 6. I'm sorry. But when we saw these DVD box sets, I saw Dragon Ball Z had a season 7, right? And there were all these crazy characters when I was reading the back of the box. I was like, huh? It said, years after the Cell Saga, blah, 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 where Z Kai had ended, to my knowledge. And I was like, there's more? So I asked my dad to buy me this DVD, and he said yes. And I took it home, and that changed my life. Season 7 of the original Dragon Ball Z was, to me, the greatest piece of media I had ever consumed in my life, because it had elevated the show, in my kiddie brain opinion, from, oh, this is a fun action show, to, hold on, because in season 7 we get a female lead character to join the cast and a romantic subplot. And so, because I've always been into female leads and romantic subplots for some reason, that is what took the show from a great show, in my opinion, to the best show I have ever seen. And so that is when I drew my first ever piece of fan art. I sat down at my little kid desk and I drew of my own volition based on the art in the DVD box set, right? Because they had character profiles. I sat there and I drew a piece of fan art. And this is the first time ever in my life that I remember that I sat there and drew fan art of a character from a show that I loved, because I love the character so much. I'm sure I had drawn characters from kiddie cartoons as well when I was little, but this was the one that I remember sitting down and being I am so inspired by this media that I am consuming that I am gonna make art. And that changed my whole life, okay? It is horrible in every way, obviously, because it's a child drew it. If I want to call it horrible, I can. It's okay. It's my art. I'll say it. It was not good, right? But it was pivotal, because then I thought it looked good at the time, obviously. So I was like, this really unlocks a whole new genre of art making for me, because I can draw characters that I like in pictures that I want to see. I want to see a swag picture of Videl with her boyfriend on one side and her father on the other side, because I think that looks cool. And so I did that a lot. At the same time, as I was going through this phase, I was also able to access unlimited internet. As a kid, I began to discover all sorts of different websites all the time. I don't know how, probably ads. But there was this one called DeviantArt, which also happened to have this in-browser drawing app that you could use, that was in DeviantArt browser. You could draw a picture using, they had different, it was MS Paint, but it was in DeviantArt, and you could publish them to a profile. Or you could take pictures of art that you had drawn and then publish those to your profile. And I remember I liked that their knockoff MS Paint so much that I ended up actually you could buy extra brushes with the in-browser the DeviantArt currency at the time was just points. So I would beg my parents to buy me points, and I would draw a little brush, or buy brushes to draw with, and I just draw a bunch of Dragon Ball fan art. And I don't have a lot left, because I actually completely wiped my DeviantArt not that long ago, because it was so embarrassing to me, and I didn't want anyone to figure it out that it was my stuff. Basically, I used this website first as a drawing tool itself, and then to upload drawings that I had done on paper of Dragon Ball characters. And it wasn't just fan art. We're gonna go into our whole new era here, which was the Dragon Ball Z OC community. So if you don't know what an OC is, somehow, then an OC is just a term for an original character, okay? And during the time when people would say RAR XD, unironically, it was also the same time that people were heavily invested in like OC culture. And there were OCs for like every single intellectual property imaginable. Like if you had any sort of universe at all, even slightly, people would make OCs. It was really big on DeviantArt, it was really big on Tumblr. This is a huge part of like online art making of this time period, right? Some people, if you don't know about that and you're watching this as a professional artist, then you might think of an OC as like something that nowadays people would be like professionally hired to like ideate on or on character concept work, right? But this was kind of different because it was very infrequently done by professionals. It was usually made by a bunch of kids like me, or adults who were like fetishists like a lot of the time, or sometimes just people who really liked a certain intellectual property and wanted to put either a self-insert or like a compelling character, but usually a self-insert into whatever intellectual property the OC was from. Or sometimes these were just characters that were totally detached from any sort of existing media universe, but most frequently it was a bunch of little kids making self-insert characters for animes and video games. So anyway, I was on DeviantArt and I was following all these Dragon Ball artists, and so many of them at the time had OCs. And I always thought, these are so cool. I'm a little kid. You know, that's how my brain worked. But I would then proceed to make a character that was probably a self-insert, but maybe not even that complex, just a cool girl to put into Dragon Ball as an OC, right? And so this character would end up probably defining my artistic life for like 10 years, like legitimately like 10 years. I probably first thought of her when I was like 8 or 9, and then the last time I think I ever drew her was when I was 17, so maybe just under 10 years of my life. I'm not gonna get into the character because it's cringe and it's gonna make me cringe. Even though it's like part of my journey, it's little kid stuff. It's like I was like a little kid coming up with a character, and that's fine. But basically, you can take drawings and concepts of this character, of which I don't even have like enough to scratch the surface of. Like save left on my hard drives. Like most of these things have unfortunately been lost to time. I didn't actually mean to delete them. I like archived them within the DeviantArt like scraps system, but that no longer exists. So all those drawings that were stored in that system no longer exist, which is a little sad, but they all sucked. So, you know, they might be in like physical places somewhere, but I'm not at my like childhood home right now, so there's no way I could find these drawings. So I'm putting on screen what I have, but basically this character was like my insert into engaging with this Dragon Ball Z DeviantArt OC community, right? So there were all sorts of different characters of all sorts of different like in-universe races, and there were like dozens of ways that you could engage with the community. There was role-playing, which happened. I'm once again going to reiterate, I was a child. So there was a lot that maybe I didn't fully understand the implications of at the time because I was like a full-on kid. But there was like just standard roleplay between two characters that you could do in like the notes, DeviantArt notes. There were like these groups that were kind of semi-unique to the Dragon Ball DeviantArt community because of the nature of how Dragon Ball is as a show, but there were these tournaments, right? So you can enter in your OCs by filling out like a tournament card, and then you go in and enter your OC into these like bracketed tournaments. Because if you know anything about Dragon Ball, they have these things, the World Tournament in English, where you basically just fight to see who the grand champion is. Essentially, it's just a tournament. I don't know, but it was like a Dragon Ball Z specific tournament, and those were so important to me. Okay, because I clearly deeply cared about this as a kid, but to me, like the greatest satisfaction or like the greatest compliment in the world as a little kid was for somebody who's older than me and better than me to draw my character. That I was like, she's my character. And these people are so amazing. Like, as artists, they're so good, and they're drawing my little old character. Like, to this day, I've probably never felt a high like that matches the level of like gratification and awe that I felt at that time in those sorts of situations when people would essentially like art trade with me, right? Because these were just us drawing each other's characters together fighting. But to see other people's interpretations of my character and for them to take the time to draw my character really was just, it was like the best feeling in the world as a kid. I was like, this is so amazing. And I'm sure if I didn't have that sort of gratification and high of that sort of feeling, I don't know how enticed I would have been to pursue art seriously growing up, because remembering that sort of feeling was really special. You know, it's still special. I always thought it was pretty amazing, you know, and I had lots of friends who would sometimes draw on DeviantArt, who would draw my character sometimes, but, you know, for these sorts of competitions, it was a sort of higher level of quality, and I was like, wow, generally just completely blown away, so. Looking back on that was like the biggest thing, was those tournaments. But there were other things too, like eventually when I got older, I started designing random new characters, and there's a big thing of like adoptables or adopts sort of culture where you can like adopt or pay for somebody else who has already pre-designed a character, and you can adopt them and then give them a personality or whatever. And so through that, I would like earn points, DeviantArt points, to like commission other people to make art of my characters essentially, or get the like premium, like what's it called, DeviantArt Core. There were other things too. There were contests and competitions and collaborations and like memes, or like everybody following like an art trend essentially. Or back in the day, we had like this huge culture of like taking a base drawing that somebody had done with no features of like characters in certain poses or doing certain things, and you color over or draw over the base. If you know, you know. You know, in general, there were lots of people engaging in this community back then who were totally amazing artists, and it was just like the place to be for me. Like, I would spend all day just thinking about my OCs and other people who were in the community and like making friends with them, and we all kind of knew each other. It was pretty funny. One can see through this artistic journey that the thing that I appreciate most about any of the places that I find myself artistically are the other people, right? Like the community. That's what's like enriching about art to me. Yeah, I like producing art for myself, but ultimately I think other people play a huge role in that sort of art making, or in the gratification that I feel in art is interacting with others from the art. But anyway, I've said a lot of positive things about this, but there was a lot that was not very positive about DeviantArt. I was so young, I had no clue what was going on. But like one guy who was a great friend on DeviantArt, who would like reach out to me all the time just to say hi, see how things were going. He had like horrible grammar, but he ended up, through like just talking with him all the time, we're trying to roleplay sometimes, he would basically commission me with points to like draw his fetish art. Okay, so I actually dug up a lot of the art. The only thing that I thought originally when making this, or like remembered, was the like absorption, like cell absorption fetish shit, but I didn't really realize what that was at the time. I think he also had like a baby thing, looking at all of the baby stuff on his profile and what he asked me to draw. So obviously I had no concept that that could be a fetish as a kid, because I was like who would ever think of that? But totally everything he ever asked me to draw was like fetish art, so haha. Shout out to you, Mike. You're a creep. I'm gonna go even further here with this one, because actually looking through what you're seeing on screen right now is me going through all of the old notes. So each one of those different little boxes you see that has the name like SSJ Mike 22 or the name Gamer X Boy, because those were his two names. That was my good friend Mike over there hitting me up to role play or just chat or ask me about life. And, you know, as you can see here, there was quite a bit of it. All of those little movements on screen are me scrolling through pages and pages of correspondence with him. I was like 14, probably. And I think he would tell me things about his life. He was like a server and he had a girlfriend, like a server at like a restaurant, and he had a girlfriend, and sometimes he had pictures on his profile or whatever, which is weird because it's DeviantArt. Why are you posting pictures of yourself? But anyway, I remember one time he asked me to be his girlfriend. I was like, don't you have a girlfriend? He's like, oh yeah, RXD, or something like that you would have said. But, you know, stuff like that happened occasionally. I have on screen actually some screenshots of the many, many notes that me and this guy exchanged, right? And I'm laughing in the recording of the footage because I had no recollection at that point of the actual content of these notes that we exchanged. But I want to say that this is not actually funny at all. This is like shocking that a grown man would correspond with a child. I was like 12 at this time. In this way. So this is not funny. Do not think I'm laughing because this is like legitimately funny. I wasn't aware of the extent of this. Like, this was horrible. One time this guy tried to roleplay with me, and he was definitely just like an older creep who was like, send me a picture of yourself. Here's a picture of me. So I did actually find the link that this guy sent me in the DeviantArt notes to his face, and obviously there it is. The link is still live, and here are some screenshots of the correspondence that we had that was essentially like softcore porn roleplay where he was trying to pressure me to send him pictures, and I was 12. And then finally he was like, you must be a guy then. And I was like, I'm not going to send you a picture. So he finally unwatched me. So this was much more brief than the other one, but still, at that point it's probably what, 12 or 13 maybe when he reached out to me like that. But luckily was scared enough as a child to be like, whoa. I don't know, like I was like, that's not what I'm here to talk about. My Dragon Ball Z OC. I am not here to get a boyfriend unless you look like Goku or whatever my kid brain said. But so it wasn't all rosy, but that's with the intelligence of an adult in hindsight. At the time I was like, this is DeviantArt, I'm having so much fun. But anyway, the point of all this was DeviantArt was like a major source of inspiration to improve as an artist, because as a child, most of the people who were drawing there or submitting art were much better than me because they were older. I will say, I mean, it's very clear if you see the first stuff that I posted as like a child to stuff that would mark more of the older era, there's sort of a difference of not just like technical basic skills like anatomy and material mastery. There's also sort of a willingness to divulge away from Dragon Ball Z as a primary style, which I think is good. Because I saw that a lot of artists were great, even if they didn't draw exactly like Akira Toriyama. So I was like, wow. Also, by the time I was like 13 or 14, I was beginning to get into other things besides Dragon Ball Z. Like, one piece of media can only dominate your life for so long. And at that point, I was getting into like video games, right? That's another, I can make a whole other video about video game inspirations that made me into a game designer. But I will say Dragon Ball Z was also the reason why I got into games, because I got an Xbox one year for Christmas specifically to play the new Dragon Ball Z game that was coming out, Ultimate Tenkaichi, which, fun fact, my mom actually got me the Xbox and not the game because that's how my mom is. But I really just wanted this one game so bad. And then through that and getting the Xbox, I did eventually get that game, as well as many others of the Dragon Ball variety. But getting that Xbox opened my horizons, and I ended up having some pretty life-changing media experiences with that as well. That would inform my artistic style and my other sort of like fan art pursuits over the years. But anyway, the primary one was still Dragon Ball, and my Dragon Ball OC Sigma grind set to get better at drawing my OCs. And nowadays, the art that I make would have made little me on DeviantArt very proud. So it wouldn't have been possible without DeviantArt, but you know, I could have done without the grooming. If anybody watching this also happened to be a member of the Dragon Ball Z OC community of DeviantArt, please leave me a comment. And if not, here's my advice. Watch what your kids do online. Thanks for watching! Oh, and follow me on ArtStation.